we are not our actions. We are not what happens to us. We are not even what we do necessarily. We are the awareness that observes what we do. The problem with personality tests is that they tell you who you are. And we love to be told who we are because we don't know who we are. The things that we tell ourselves about our personality actually end up holding us back because we feel like we're fixed in a certain way. We fall into this category of type of human and we can't change. Recently, I read this book called Personality Isn't Permanent by Benjamin Hardy, and it kind of changed my opinion on personality tests. It's almost like a diagnosis of if I tell you you are this way, you start to believe it. My personal favorite is the Myers-Briggs, which categorizes you into 16 personalities, I believe. There are four main factors. The first one is E versus I, introverted versus extroverted, which is basically like how loud and flamboyant and how much you like to express yourself versus how more reserved and quiet and like your social battery, whether it gets recharged from interacting with people or whether your social battery recharges from just being by yourself. The second one is intuitive versus sensing, and this measures how open you are to new things, basically. I've noticed that people who are more N type, so more intuitive, they tend to be bigger picture thinkers, and they like to think about like philosophy. They like to think, what is the meaning behind these things? Versus people who are S, sensing, tend to live more in the day-to-day. The next one is T versus F, which is thinking versus feeling. Myers-Briggs says that people who are thinking tend to think more with their brain versus people who are feeling, they follow their feelings more and they follow their heart when they make decisions. But this is actually not accurate according to the leading model of psychology, which I'll talk about more. And the last part is P versus J, which stands for prospecting versus judging. People who are more judging type or J tend to prefer order and structure. They like to plan, they like routine, versus people who are more P type prefer to leave things open-ended and they're a bit more chaotic. I'll say that. I'm a P type, I'm a little bit chaotic sometimes, but I've learned to use routines and structure and like organize my thoughts. So that's another point on why personality can change. Myers-Briggs does not follow the leading model used in psychology right now, which is the 5-factor Ocean model. There are slight differences. People who say that MBTI is a complete scam, it's not true. Like, there are some factors that are mostly accurate. For example, extroverted versus introverted is also used in the leading model used in psychology. So that is MBTI, that is Ocean personality model. There's other ones like Enneagrams. I kind of forgot what they're called. I've never done that one before, but the point is there's a lot of personality tests out there. It's very fun, but this book kind of changed my perspective. The problem with personality tests is that they tell you who you are. And we love to be told who we are because we don't know who we are. If I pay for the person's order behind me at Starbucks, I did a nice thing, so I internalize that I'm a nice person. And if you do enough kind things, it becomes a part of your identity that you are a kind person. But at the end of the day, these are all just stories that we tell ourselves because we aren't ever any kind of person because our actions don't determine who we are. The issue with associating your actions with your identity is that if you fuck up or make a mistake or do something bad, you tell yourself that that's who you are. And you start to internalize that you're a bad person. So yeah, sure, if you do a lot of good things, you might start to internalize that you are a good person. But this is also why people start to develop superiority complexes, because they think that their external environment and their actions determine who they are. So who really are you? Who are you? I've thought a lot about this. It's our awareness that is who we are. At the end of the day, we are not our actions. We are not what happens to us. We are not even what we do necessarily. We are the awareness that observes what we do. Who I am is that stream of consciousness that is aware of all of my actions and aware of what's happening to me. Simply put, I'm just the observer. We're all just streams of consciousnesses. But we don't know who we are, right? And we're always trying to figure out, we're like, humans are wired to like always find meaning. We're wired to always be learning, and we're wired to always try to make sense of our environment and understand what is going on around us because we're scared. It could be like a fucking lion, like that's a predator that's about to eat us. So we want to be aware of what goes on around us. So we're always synthesizing information. We're always labeling. We tell ourselves stories about the people around us that we meet. And it's like, that's why I also have a problem with people saying judging is bad, because we need to judge. Like, what is a judgment? A judgment, like, we're all just trying to make sense of the world, right? So when we form a judgment about someone, it's just the best understanding that we can form about this person with the information that we have. Let's say you lock eyes with a stranger on the subway and they roll their eyes at you. You might judge them because in your past experiences, people who do that have not been nice to you. So you form a judgment. Depending on what your past experiences have taught you, you could form a very harsh judgment, like this person is a mean person, they're just rude, or you could form maybe a less harsh judgment that, okay, maybe they're having a bad day. But at the end of the day, you're forming a judgment about this person because that's how humans make sense of the world. We're just making snap judgments about literally everything, everywhere. When you smell your leftover food in your fridge, you're making a judgment about whether or not it's still good. So we're making judgments about the people around us, but we're also always making judgments about ourselves. We're trying to understand ourselves. And we love personality tests because they tell us who we are, and we think that we're developing some sort of understanding of who we are through personality tests. But the issue with personality tests is that you answer a set of questions about how you would react in a certain scenario, or what actions you would take, or how some situations would make you feel, and you put in all your answers and it spits out a result. This is your personality. You start to identify with what they tell you because it makes sense. We start to confuse our actions with who we are, and we start to identify with our actions, with our answers to the questions that they ask us. And you start to tell yourself stories, and they can be harmless. You can say, okay, I like parties, I like to socialize because I'm an extrovert. It seems harmless, but it can get more serious. A lot of people don't believe it when I tell them this, but I used to be extremely introverted. I would always think about what I had to say before I said it. When I was a kid, I didn't like to talk ever, and I just kind of stuck to myself, and I just like read books all day and literally lived in my own world. But I remember I hated this about myself. I had a lot of self-blame for it, which looking back, like wasn't healthy. What did come out of it that was productive was that I would constantly push myself to talk more and become more extroverted. I always admired my friends who just said whatever was on their mind. Even though I was introverted and I didn't feel that need to, I knew I was also scared to. And I really didn't like that because I knew it was irrational. Like, why was I scared of talking? I remember like being in class as a kid and like knowing the answer to the question that the teacher asked, and my heart would be like beating like this, and I'd be like, raise my hand or not raise my hand, raise my hand or not raise my hand. And I wouldn't raise my hand. And then I would be super upset at myself for it. And I didn't like the fact that books were my best friend, and I didn't socialize with anybody, and I literally just read books all day. But at the time, I didn't realize that I was introverted, or I didn't label myself. And I was so determined to change this, that I would constantly push myself to talk more. It's like, I convinced myself if my friends could do it, if my friends could say whatever was on their mind and be super duper social butterflies, then I could do it too. Why not? Like, they're human, I'm a human. I can do that too. I wasn't aware of personality types. I wasn't aware that our environments and our genetics and all of that kind of stuff had an influence on our personalities. But like, looking back, it worked out in my favor. When I was 15, I got a job selling pizzas at Little Caesars, and there I talked to people all day. And I realized, okay, it's like pretty normal to talk to people. Then the more people that I talked to, the more I kind of overcame my shyness, but also the more extroverted I became, because I realized I like talking to people. And I liked it because I told myself it was a good thing. So it kept like reaffirming. And I think because I liked talking to people so much, I would do it more and more and more, because in my head, talking to people equals positive, because not talking to people equals negative. Me not classifying myself as a certain personality type back when I was a kid helped me literally change my personality 180. Now I literally don't shut up ever. This goes on also with neuroplasticity. Our brain is always changing, and there have been studies to prove this. There was a study that showed that New York cab drivers, when they were actively driving, they would have more gray matter in the part of their brain that was in charge of spatial sense and like basically mapping things out. And when they stopped, it would shrink. But if they started again, that part of their brain would grow again. Before, neurologists thought that your brain stopped changing after 25. So you would develop as a kid, you'd go on to grow, but at 25, you're like pretty much the same. Now we know that's not true. The parts of your brain that are responsible for your personality are always changing too. One of my best friends used to be super neurotic. So he used to worry about everything. He told me like when he was a kid, he would worry about going on vacation because he was worried that the tectonic plates of the new location he was going to would shift and there would be an earthquake. Because we live in Ontario and the tectonic plates are very stable. So he would literally not be able to fall asleep at night because of this. But now he's like the person who worries the least about like everything. It can be kind of bad sometimes to be on the other end where you don't care about anything and you think everything is always fine. But the point is, your personality can shift like completely. It can do a 180. To conclude, personality tests are a huge industry because we love it when people tell us what we're like. Humans are always looking to understand everything around us and ourselves. And personality tests offer us a way to understand. And they're good guidelines because there are some patterns in people's personalities that are similar, but your personality does not define you. And the worst possible thing is if you adopt the mentality that because you are this type of personality, this is who you are and you can't change. You can always change yourself. You can always improve yourself. If there's something you don't like about yourself, if you set your mind to it, if you believe that you can change, a lot of the times you will change. I don't believe in manifestation. I actually made a video about manifestation. You can watch it if you want to. But it's really weird how a lot of the times the things that we are convinced of become self-fulfilling prophecies. Thank you for watching my video. Stay woke.